Welcome to the Advanced Software Design module, and today we are going to work on the software testing part. And under that, we are going to discuss about what a software testing is and different types of software testing. And then we are going to look at some examples. Right. So under this, when it comes to software testing
Properly.
Hello,
Sir, we can't hear properly.
let me check. Right. Software testing is a crucial part of the software development. Now, when you look at the traditional software life cycle model, we have to have a very systematic sequential approach to software development. So this happens through software requirement analysis, design, and then you generate the code and then the testing. So the main aim of this software testing part will be to understand what is expected behavior of the system and what is the observed behavior of the system. So that's what mainly we focus on software testing. Now, when you look at testing, we can see it as a testing process. Now, usually at your level, like when you're given a problem and when you come up with a solution as implementing as a code, you perform what we call unit testing because you work on individual units and the testing units are known as unit tests. Now, then once the units are done, we can make them together, maybe multiple units, then maybe the module level. We can make it on what we call integrated testing. So whether these two properly integrate together. Once all the modules you put everything as a system to check the testing as a whole, which we call the system testing. So that means you are going to check within the program, within the system, right? And then path testing, you can check, for example, the output coming from old and new system. So this happens, and there are some test specialists to involve this process. Now, there are many strategies we can think of when it comes to software testing. So one critical aspect of this is quality assurance. We call software quality assurance. So in short, we say QA. So the idea is you check and determine the quality of the system and its related model, right? So we have to have some test plan. So in that test plan, you should have a system that means introduction to the system. You have to have test plan, test procedures, and independency of test cases and projection. Now, the testing is not easy. So most of the time we try to automate it. This is called test automation. So for example, when you say test automation, we can say a test to automate, especially saving a lot of time for minimizing the manual labor work. So this automation can be applied in different levels, as I told you earlier, as single units, which we call unit testing, and integration testing, and even at the system level. So we can talk about unit testing, what we call unit testing and integrated testing. This is to early detection of any problem. basically identifying bugs. And then ensures that the individual component of the function as intended and seamlessly integrates with other modules. So there's no any issues when you integrate the other one because nowadays our software is heavily depend on some other third-party modules. And then we can have also have regression testing. Most of the time, we can prevent errors coming from new modules or any modification. So why we are doing this? Because most of the time, what will happen once you develop the system and test and working fine, you don't want to make any changes because when you make changes, it might affect the system and system might fail. Right. Now let's look at some couple of examples. The first one that I would like to discuss is Selenium, which is very popular open source framework for web application testing. And when it comes to software testing, many people, rely on software such as Selenium. And Appium is also partly based on the Selenium, but that is mainly for automating mobile apps, especially whether your user face, user interface that you develop is functioning correctly, testing all the uh, interface elements. Cypress is Java-based end-to-end testing framework, and again for use for web application. JUnit, again another test framework for Java application. And the last two I actually particularly select from Python, which I think since you have already learned Python at the beginning, I can demonstrate them how to perform some uh, testing, right? So the standard, Python testing is what we call PyTest. It's a testing framework for Python. But then there are like very simple way of your testing code you as well. Doc test. So doc testing, when you write the code, you can use it within your code to make it your program as a testable one, which I'm going to start today, right? Just to finish the theory part. So the principle for test automation is you have to first test automation. You need the testing is a serious issue, and what parts of the testing should be automated, and then can build and maintain a reliable test script. So this is most important part. And testers should adhere to standard software development practices, and good judgment is required in selecting appropriate tests to automate. Test automation should be cost effective and common sense should be applied to the process. Practical approach to automated software testing. So, in order to succeed in automated software testing, the automated testing system, testing infrastructure, software testing lifecycle, corporate support must work together to support one another. So, just to elaborate what this means, to automating software system is not an individual thing, right? You have to test a lot of cases and you need to support from different parts. Like that. An automated testing system should be flexible and easy to update and good bug tracking system, standard test case format, baseline test data, and comprehensive test plan should be in place. So this is to say that you have to learn and research on your system and what test cases you should include it. The software testing lifecycle which defines a set of phases outlining what exactly to perform and when to conduct it. Corporate support is essential for success of the test method. Right. Okay. So this will summarize our today's outline, how we may actually test piece of software. So the next one, I'm going to show you using Python, uh, how to write simple function in a class, and then how to test it, right? So let's start. I want everybody to, you know, work on at least couple of functions. Okay. So to start the work, can you give me, right, a small Python function to adding two numbers? Write a small Python function to add two numbers. And can you share the code in the chat? Okay, let's mark that in this, guys. Please mark that in this. So we can write simple add function, right? Where we will use it, right, to add two numbers together. That's one way to do this. But what I'm interested in is automatically testing this. So what I want you to is discuss how we can improve it, right? So let's look at our example, right? Um, Let me take add numbers. Let's say I want to get something like this, 3 comma 5, right? But we know that there's no function called add number. So what we need to do, then we create a function called add numbers. So the command is there, add numbers, right? And then we have to provide whatever the values, let's say in1 comma n2, right? And then maybe we can say return n1 plus n2, right? So now you can see we have created this. Now if you go back and execute the same command, now we have the answer, right? Let's check with some other value. Yeah. verse 5. So this is simply how you define your own user function. Now let's try to get the help. Now if you say help and numbers, right? So you get incomplete help function like this. So it says help on function, add underscore numbers in module main and add numbers. That's all. Okay, so you can see that when we are defining our function, we should have improved this, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to now write the same function as a script file, right? Now to do that, I will select file, new file, where I will get a complete new window, right? Now let me share both the windows, right? One side we have the script, other side we have. So here I'm going to say, okay, def add numbers in one, comma, in two, we can say return in one plus in two. And let me save it, right? In this particular case, let me save, right? So testing, ready, the number, we will say by the function. Okay, it's good, right? So now when you run this one, nothing will show, but now you can use this without any issue in one command. So let me see, 34 to 7. Sorry, it should be at number, right? And when you say help, add numbers, yes, we get a simple help. Now, this is how we might sometimes write function, but this is not descriptive at all. So now, when you want to develop a software which is very descriptive, we should use, a lot of information when you're right. So, for example, we can say that okay, what happening in the function we call doc string, right? Doc string. So let me say doc string. Doc string means in Python how we actually document this. So usually in between this, I can have triple double quote or triple uh, single quote or triple double quote. And then we can talk about what we, for example, we can see, right? Add two numbers. Function add two numbers. Args in one, in two. But we can say these are some of the arguments. And we can also talk about things like what it repeats, right? So now let's look at, right? So we can say, okay, this will return, right? We can say in1 plus into. So now let's run this again once after modified. I told you this is doctrine. Now this time, if I rerun the code, no change. But when you look at the help, you will see slightly different. So now help is very comprehensive. It tells us, okay, here is a function, and it also tells us, okay, what are the arguments and what is the return. So you by adding this triple double quotes into the code improves the code. This is called docstring. Now what we are interested in is not the docstring part, the testing part. Now we can provide some more information like this. Now what you could do is you can provide some examples. Examples you put in such a way that the outcome you are going to get, right? So like this, we can go back, right? We can say, okay, we get add numbers. Another one, let's say add numbers. They take some negative values. You know, can provide some information like this. So I'm going to copy paste this one. The idea is I'm going to use them as test cases. I will say here examples, right? I'll provide them like this. I'll put the answers like this. So by doing so, what will happen? Nothing much what we did, right? But we have some cases we have added here. Now let me run and run mode. Nothing much change in the execution. You can try this. You will get different answers. Right? You don't see really what is happening, right? And if you take help, now this time help is more informative because it's now providing you examples as well. Now let's look at how to test this. So this is how we should be starting. We write a function and we provide in detail what this function does with some example and sample uh, queries and answers, right? And then we can write a separate test code to test it, right? So we'll start like this, and then we can directly right. So what we could do is, let's see whether this is working. So what we did here, actually we have used what we call the doc test, and we use these functions we have included in the text itself to test it. So there's no failed attempt by 3 attempts that we have. So this is the direct way that we can actually work with doc test. So what happens here when you say test doc test mode, function will execute the doc test. That means the text we put inside the triple single quote or triple double quote, and it compare the actual with the expected outcome. And if there's an error, we will get an error message. Right? So let's make a mistake within the code and let's see. So for example, if I'm going to, let's say, change something here, I will check this as, let me say, run, run. Okay. Do the test model again. So now you can see, I actually make the change that I'm expecting this answer. And you can see now it actually failed. It says, okay, so this is adding two numbers. This is what I expected, but this is what you got, right? So you can see now it could be automated, right? This method is called doc test, right? Now I have a very small assignment to explain the second part of the doc test. The right now you can see here what we are going to have is the, the student one, right? And then in this student one, we will have only a one method, right? Now let's add another method. So in this time, so I'm going to get def, let's say add grade. So when you're adding a grade, we will again refer the same object, and what we provide is a grade valid. And what we need is it needs to be include the list. So in the list, we have to use append method. So we can say self dot grade, self dot grade, right? We can say append, we can say grade. Maybe I will put this grade is this is grade. This should be grade. Okay. Right now we add in the grade. So this is my second method. So you can do multiple times depend on how many grades that you want to add, right? Um, so let's um, one more thing is let's get the average. Let's get, but you have to be very careful. If you are doing empty, you have to handle that separately. I'm not going to type that because that will uh, make the code looks very complex. So I'm going to assume that you first add couple of grades, and assuming that, then you have a list of grades, and then we want to get the average. So getting the average is easy. We can get the sum of all the grades, and then you will get the size of the, that means length of the list, right? Should give you the, yeah, right. Let's so let's remove this heavy part. Let's say we'll have a small, let's say student class. Okay. So let me run again, run module, see what will happen. Nothing is happened. So let me get back to our previous student details. I'm going to rerun that. Right, we have the first student. Okay. Now we have a couple of methods available. Student one, let's see, I'm going to add grade, let's say 45. Student one, let's add another grade, let's say 85. Now let's check the average. Student one get average grade, check it in 65. It works fine, right? Right. I think we have the basic structure get going, right? Um, so the next thing that we want is uh, how do you test this, right? The testing is the one I'm actually interested in. Now, when you want to test, right, simply like in previous case, you have to provide information, right, within this, right, within this. So, for example, you have to write down everything that you want to have, right, within this. So, the best way would be that you will include everything as example, right, like in a case. So, let's say this, I will add there. So, this is a student class. Then you can also have other information like, for example, we can add more information like, okay, attributes. We can say attributes are name, string value, if you want to specify, student ID, uh, string value, grade, sorry, we said grades, right? It's a list. Then we specify two methods. Let's say what are the methods? Methods, we can say, okay, add grade, grade, add grade, right? And then we said get average grade. That's what we have. You can actually talk about it. Now next comes the interesting part. Now we have to put down exactly what will be the outcome of yours. So that should put as outcome. So the best way to do this is to actually come. We are copying from the terminal. which you tested, right? So let me show you. Right now, I'm going to put it in this form. Let me run module, right? No changes in, but let's have this no change, right? No change and no change and no change. So when you want to get something, we know that this is the outcome we are expecting. We copy everything from here. I'm going to say Control C, and here I will paste it, right? So I will say example, say, and then I will indentation is very important in Python, so I everything included. So these are the commands you have executed, and this is the expected outcome. So this is the input, and this is the output, right? And we have included everything in the same place, right? Now we can execute again run module. Again, there's no difference. But now we can check earlier. Remember, we said import doc test, right? And then you have to say doc test, not test mod, right? So it says test result. There are 4 attempts. That means there are 4 execution lines. No failure, right? So this will make sure that later on when you change something, let's say you mistakenly did something wrong, right? Let's say instead of division, let's put plus here. That can happen. So now let's run again, right? No errors you will see, but if you test it, every time you modify, you can test. It says, okay, that's a mistake. You know that something has changed, right? So this is very important, especially when you're modifying a code and when you're improving, right? Especially from the start, and then when you gradually build your code, you make sure your previous test cases are there. So this is the simply one method of unit testing in Python, which is called, right, doc test. And this is, we include our examples, or we include, right, everything within the code itself. So I told you this is the doc test, right, in a class like this. And here is the test outcome. So you have all the inputs, 4 statements, and here is the expected outcome. And we have seen that it actually, look at or compare it, right? Okay. Any questions on up to this point? But first of all, you can try and see whether you can check the procedure technique I have used is I everything included here, and I have these 2 lines, and which will test my student class implementation. So what we have seen with the previous Python example is how to use doctest, which is the testing framework of Python. So the next one is more advanced frameworks are there. So I will explain one more Python-based framework which you can use for testing. So this is called PyTest. So let me explain that next. So to explain PyTest, it's a separately you need to store. and then the difference from the previous one is you don't have to incorporate the code, uh, the test cases with the code itself. You can keep the test cases separate. So that's how we are going to work on here, right? So let's look at how we could use PyTest for the same two problems. So let me start with the first one. So I will take my first code and I will make it the first code on Python function. So I will uh, save it as a Python function v2 because I'm going to change the bit. Right now, let me share you what we have in the version 2 and what we need to keep. Now, when I want to use PyTest framework, the idea of PyTest is we are going to have separately we are going to access. So what we could do is we can whatever the function is, we should be able to use it, right? So that's what we can do. So in this particular case, we don't need samples to be included. We can simply remove them because this is not necessary because we are going to write them separate. So I'm going to save it first. So this is what I have right now. Very simple one. Now we have to create another separate place where we can use this, right? So let's see. So I'm going to say uh, new file, right? And we can see. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is so I'm going to say import file test. That's the library that we have to have. Remember that it should be installed. You can check if it is not installed. We have to use it to install, and then you have to install file. Now I have to access the file where the function is actually defined. The function is defined under Python function v2 Python file. So I'm going to say import Python function v2. Uh, Actually, what I need is only the function I have to get. So I can say from Python function v2. I'm going to import admin. So this is the functionality that I'm going to get. Now we can have some test cases. So usually we type test add numbers, whatever the functions that I'm going to use, right? And then what we do is we will add couple of what we call assertions. Assertions means we'll check, right, the possibility. So the keyword is assert. We say add number. Right? What happens if you put 3 and 5? We expect 8, right? So likewise, assert add number. let's say 2.5 comma 3.5, let's say 6.0. So likewise, you can have some assets. So these are all possibilities that we won't check. Let's say when you add 0 and 0. So what is the output? So this is what we need to do. So the name I actually given you from file, I will just say add numbers, right? And what happens in each assert statement, we check the actual result value to the test case. Now to run it, we have to directly run this, right? And then we have to type the command. So we will save this. I'm going to save this. I'm going to have a testing file, right? So the test file, I'm going to say, okay, test add numbers dot file, test add numbers and dot file, right? And then you can simply type test. So now we can find simply test test to the, work. Let me go back to the directory and show you. You right now my computer, I don't have uh, test is not installed. So let me insert it install test. So I installed test. In my case, I didn't have it. So to install test, what I need is the command that I have used, is install test, and it's a success now. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to run my test file, right, and see the output. And usually you can see test will, right, the test should tell you whether you are getting any errors or not. Have to go to the where I have saved the file. So I will go to desktop, and I create a folder for Python test. So here is what I have. So test, yes, we should. Okay. So now you see, ah, I made a mistake. So when I add the function, there's a When I add the, it says add number, there's no add number is not defined. Yes, I am. So let me go back to my code. The function, it should be add number, right? Let me see it again. Let's try the PyTest also. So this time it says, okay, selected one item and it's passed. So the difference between my previous technique and this technique, in previous technique, the testing will be included in the code itself, and that's the very simple. But in this one, it's a separate one, and the test cases you can keep it separate, right? And so the advantage is it's separate from your code, which will ease the burden of the test. Okay, to summarize what we have discussed, today's session is mainly the importance of the testing and software testing and the different ways of testing and some existing tools. And then we did a very small exercise on how we can create simple functions. And then we tried with two different unit tests that we using PyDoc, and then we will have PyTest, sorry, doc test, and uh, we have test Py, right? Now, what I want you to try is now remember we created a class diagram, class student, and we did it using doc test technique. And I want you to extend this to PyTest for you, right? So it's a small work for you based on the content that we have discussed in today's session. So take our student class and use it to test using PyTest for you. Okay, that's all what I have you for today on testing. And next week we will meet again with another topic. Okay, thank you.